Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Your TV. I'm Paul Wilson, and our guest today is a legend in the broadcast industry. It is Graham Hart, and it is a privilege for me, Graham, to be at this side of the table when you should be doing the interviewing.
Well, it's awkward for me to be at this side of the table, but if I had to be, I'd be happy to be on this side of the table opposite you.
Well, but you had an outstanding 45 years at CHEX TV, Peterborough.
Well, thank you.
And you retired, what, 12 months ago?
Roughly 12 months ago, yeah.
How are you liking retirement?
It has been more comfortable than I ever imagined, or I might have retired sooner. You know, I kind of hung on thinking that it would be difficult because I really enjoyed my work.
Yes.
But the time was appropriate in the sense that I would normally go to Nova Scotia in May, and I retired at the end of April. So there was that natural, already built-in break. So it just worked out very nicely. I'm enjoying it, I must say.
Well, good. Every time I see you are smiling, which is an indication of enjoyment.
That's a good sign.
Growing up in Dartmouth?
Dartmouth was my hometown.
And you were at high school in Dartmouth?
I was.
And then you went to Dalhousie.
That's right. I went to Dal to take engineering.
Why did you choose engineering?
Well, I had been tinkering with motorcycles and automobiles in my teens, my mid-teens actually, even before I could drive. When I thought of university, the only thing I could come up with that seemed close to that was engineering, but I don't think it is close to it. You know, I like the hands-on part of it.
One of your colleagues at CHEX describes you as being a fanatical about English grammar. Where did that come from then?
Well, that would have come from my mother, probably initially, because she was a teacher in her youth. And so I presume that's where it might have come from, because that's really, it doesn't seem to fit anything else, does it?
Well, I thought it was an interesting quality that you have, a very good one, but still interesting and unusual.
Well, I guess it is, and I remember if I caught my mother in a grammatical, she was thrilled in later life.
Yes.
She would say, "Oh, good for you.
Yes.
You're right." Not that I did that often or had to. I think I might have only done it once or twice. Just it was always done in humor. But that's an interesting question.
Well, and Graham, it's becoming more important, it seems to me, as progress is made, isn't it? So you were ahead of your time.
I was, if we call it progress.
You then graduated from engineering. How did you get into radio then?
Well, Sandy Irwin, a friend of mine in Nova Scotia who's still there, and I used to run the Dartmouth teen dances, and we would do the music. We provided the music. And we would invite the local disc jockey from CHS at one of the evenings, and we'd pay him a stipend for that. And so when a chap was leaving CHS, they called me and asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, yeah, I would, part-time, you know. This was part-time work for the summer. In those days, commercials were there might be 20 on a disc.
Oh, I see.
And they would give you the number 13, so you'd have to count them in. They'd be in blocks of 5 or 10.
Right.
And then you'd hold that back, cue it up, and then let it go. Well, nobody knows about that today if they're new at the business because it's all computerized.
Right. How did you get to Peterborough?
I gave a month's notice in Chatham. I was doing a mid-morning show at CFCO. We still have reunion. I've sort of fired up a reunion down there.
Oh, very good.
Once a year in August, and then I do another one in September at CKBW in Bridgewater. So it's great fun to get together with those people. So I had done a mid-morning show, and we had a new manager, which had nothing really to do with this, but the manager with whom I'd worked and gotten along with very nicely had gone off to the West and doing a broadcast job there. So I just thought, maybe it's time to take a break from it. And I don't know why, but I can't remember specifically, but there was one day I think I went out to the switchboard and just said, boy, I don't know if I can continue doing. And there was one competition that was kind of partially rigged, you know. I mean, we weren't cheating, but it was just, I don't know, there was just a little something about it that bothered me. So I said, I don't know if I can continue doing this. And she said, why don't you just quit? And I said,
Right.
good idea. And the next day I did.
Oh,
Yeah, I gave a month's notice. I didn't have anywhere to go. And so then during the course of that, a chap who I don't know who, told CHEX that I was, I would be looking for work or unavailable. I was available, I think. And I said, well, I'm really not. But anyway, they invited me up and they were just great. I liked the town. They were more than cordial at CHEX.
And this was the first time you'd ever been to Peterborough?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had never been in this town before. I'd driven past it on the 401,
yeah.
but, south, of course. And yeah, so I said, I'll give it a shot I'll give you a year. I would never give a news station less than a year, and never did, because they spend a fair bit of time, getting you set up and organizing and so on. So in fairness to them. So then, 45 years later.
I was going to say, well, Graham, you were moving a lot in those days. You say give you a year, but you moved a lot.
I did in those early years. Yeah.
So what really made the difference in Peterborough? And you're here now 45 years later.
Well, I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing, but I found the town very pleasant. I met some very fine people, enjoyed my life here. And another factor has to be stated here too. Wally Mott came up from Toronto, and I wanted to take a year's leave of absence to get on my cars and a few other things that I had let languish because I was working. And he kind of orchestrated with Jack Ruddle, who was running the station.
Right.
Wally came up as the news director. And the head of news, I think he had even more title than that. And I said, I wanted to take a year's leave of absence. And he spoke to Jack and Jack. He said, why don't you stay with us and do part-time? You can go to Nova Scotia when you feel like it. And just as long as we work it out, we'll be fair to you, you'll be fair to us. So I said, well, it wasn't quite the same because I couldn't use the whole time to concentrate on what I was doing.
Right.
But it offered me a tremendous amount of flexibility. So that was for a year. So at the end of the year, I spoke to Jack, I guess. He was in the hallway, and I don't know why. He looked at his watch. I guess, there were probably dates on the watch then back then.
Yes.
And he said, you're pretty well ready to come back, are you, full-time? And I said, well, is there any chance we could stretch this for another year? Yeah, I guess so. It was that kind of thing.
So
it was all word of mouth, by the way. The
Yes.
deal we had was completely,
Yeah.
there wasn't a thing on paper. And that became an issue later when, the station was sold. They wanted to see the contract.
Oh, right.
And we didn't have one.
Yeah, right.
Which attests to a changing time.
Yes, yes.
And there's nothing wrong with having
It's
a
done
contract.
over a handshake.
It was a handshake.
Yeah. So did you and Wally Mott come to CHEX at the same time?
No, he came after I came.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit after I came. So, and then the end of the second year, Wally came to me and said, now, are you coming back full time? And I said, is there any chance we could stretch this for another year? And he said, well, leave it with me. And he, spoke to Jack Ruddle, and he came back and said, yeah, I think we can. And after that, it was never really, we just kept doing it. And of course, in the interim, I had done some management work myself, but had gone back into the newsroom. I did management for 8 years, but it wasn't really. I didn't enjoy it as much.
You liked the newsroom.
I did. I liked the vibrancy of the newsroom, working, on not being behind a desk.
Right.
And that's where engineering might have killed me.
Right. CHEX was your first TV experience.
Yeah, I did cable work, a couple of bits of cable work before that in Chatham. And I did some TV in Halifax too. I
Oh,
read a
did
couple
you?
of newscasts, but very minor.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking in terms of switching to television. But television was a significantly greater, it was enough of a change from the radio,
Right.
which I loved too. And if I ever were to do something else, I would probably do a little radio somewhere.
Right,
You know,
right.
maybe a community station in
Yeah.
Nova Scotia where I'd moved back.
Graham, you have made a huge impact on this community. Not just your TV work, but also your involvement in things like Heartbeat, for instance. Campus quiz.
Yeah, well, that's true. I hear about Campus Quiz a great deal.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do, still. And I would say that on average, probably every couple of weeks, somebody mentions to me, just a week ago, somebody said, I was on Campus Quiz. And way back, I always hate how far back that goes.
Well,
But,
how long did you do Campus Quiz for?
well, I don't know that I can put a year on it. I started very soon after I came because the chap who did it left,
Right.
who had been doing it.
Yes.
Because it started about 2 or 3 years before I arrived. And then I did it for quite a while. Somebody might fill in when I was away, and trying to think of how long we did do it. And then when I got into management, there were some suggestions that we not, the managers not do a lot of on-air work. They should be concentrating on the future of the station and so on.
Really?
Yeah, so that was awkward in a sense too.
That was a bit of a change of direction.
It was. And
Yeah.
so I have to say that is probably the main reason. Not that I wasn't even in the newsroom. I wasn't in that vibrancy. I was behind the desk a lot. And I realized that wasn't really what I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be the on-air work, but just to be in the milieu of a operating newsroom and the vibrancy that occurs in an operating newsroom, and every day is different. So I went back. They had a guy doing the news, chap doing the news, and he left. I forget how that worked. But anyway, I said to the news director, whom I had a role in placing in that position, along with the other executive vice presidents, could I be considered for that anchor position?
Oh, really?
Again, yeah, there wasn't a tremendously long absence from it.
Yeah.
But well, he said, "Gee, yeah, I guess well, we'd love to have you, but we can't pay you, what you're getting as as in management." I said, "Well, that's not a factor for me." And by the way, it never has been. I don't know why, but
Well,
money
good
has
for
never
you.
been a
Well,
factor.
you obviously said yes, and here we go.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to take a short break, and we'll come back to Graham Hart's legendary status in the broadcast business at CHEX Peterborough. Welcome back to Your TV. I'm Paul Wilson, and our guest is that legendary broadcaster from CHEX TV, Peterborough, Graham Hart. You, as the interviewer, have to be interested in the project.
There's no question about it. I think if it shows very clearly
If you're not
one is not interested.
Yes, yeah.
And also, it depends on. I never had anybody become angry or upset. And I suppose it requires a certain amount of diplomacy, especially when dealing with politicians, when you have to ask the hard questions.
Yes.
But it's how they're asked. I never had anybody get up and leave. Maybe some wish to, but that never manifested itself.
But I think you, because of your nature, would treat everybody with respect.
Well, I think it's important for any interviewer to do so.
Yeah.
And there are ways to ask a question that are not biased and that are straight down the middle and give that interviewee an opportunity
Yeah.
to state his case or
Yes,
her case.
yes.
if there is some complaint about that
Yeah.
person. So by presenting that possibility to them, I would think that that politician would be grateful, or whoever,
Yes.
to be able to express
That-
his or her feeling about
Right,
it.
right.
But sometimes that's not the case, and sometimes because maybe it is not defendable. If that happens, it didn't happen to me, but I'm trying to think if there was a case. Now, I don't believe there was, but I've seen it happen.
Just as a matter of fact, did you ever think of going into politics yourself?
Not for long. I've been approached.
Yeah, well,
And-
that does not surprise me.
Well, and I think it's primarily because I would be a known commodity,
Yes.
not necessarily because of any skill that would be perceived on my part. But I think politicians, there are politicians who have been in broadcasting. It isn't a guarantee.
Yes,
Being in broadcasting or being well known isn't a guarantee of a position.
right.
And we have good examples of people who have not been successful who have been in broadcasting. But no, I turned it down quickly when it happened. Same with job offers. I was good at just nixing it right at the front end without spending a lot of time or wasting people's time. The only job offer I had that I followed up, I was flown to the place and treated with great respect, and they were just very fine people, and then offered me the job, and I just realized that I really wasn't interested in leaving Peterborough. If I were to continue my career in broadcasting, I would stay here, and I was never tempted, nor was I tempted with politics.
Well,
I think I'd be dreadful as a politician. I think they'd catch me sleeping in the question period with great frequency.
Well, let me just say, I think Peterborough is very happy and lucky that you did stay.
Well, thank you.
So-
I'm lucky I stayed, though, too.
Well, I often said we're so lucky to live in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada.
I agree.
But when you
agree.
first came to CHEX, you were up on the hill,
Yes.
and you have a story there about the first live camera performance.
Yeah, that is considered probably one of the first. I would expect it would be one of the first because of the unusual circumstances of our position on the hill
Right.
to have been done. I wish I could put a date to it, but I can't. A fire was very significantly burning by the CP station on George Street,
Right.
downtown, where the chamber now is. But it wasn't that building. It was one next to it. It was a warehouse.
Yes.
And it was burning furiously. So the chaps brought the cameras out, and they had what they called extenders, which would be a thing on the front of it, which would be a close-up.
Right.
And so Neil Bougen was downtown as the reporter and went into a telephone booth and gave the report. Well, the guys on the hill were shooting the fire, literally, at the moment that the live report was being given. And very rare, because we didn't have portable cameras at that time. Well, we had 35 millimeter cameras, I think, at that stage. And you couldn't have an instant. It wasn't possible to translate that directly. But the cameras, these are the portable cameras we had, were 35 millimeter. The live camera, which would be used to shoot newscasts and anything else that was happening in the studio, was out on the back deck. And you might remember being up there. It was a wonderful spot.
Yes, it was.
Overlooking the river and the canal. And we actually, during the summer scene, we would do interviews in the summer, and we had, the guys would shoot people golfing. Yeah, you know, just as a cutaway, just for fun.
Yeah.
And one time, a chap had made a very bad shot at something or somewhere, and he wrapped his device that hits the ball. What do they call it?
Club. It's a club.
Thank you. Wrapped it around a tree, and it was very funny. And I don't know that it
And you got that.
Well, it was he was shooting it live at the time.
It was, yes.
None of the stuff would be on tape because it was all live back
Right.
then, or most of it was. I think most of the interviews I did in the early days were all live.
But Graham, the changes in the industry that you have seen over 40
Yes.
years are extraordinary, aren't they?
They are extraordinary. We went from the 35 millimeter, for example, to videotape. We were the first in Canada to go all videotape recording.
Really?
Others had an amalgam of some 35 millimeter. They didn't want to give them up. It's like having a hybrid car. You don't want to quite give up that engine yet, but you want to go electric as much as you can. And that's what most of Canada did. But we were using Panasonic equipment and went 100% with the video. So that was the next change. And of course today with the computer, and I alluded to this earlier, when it comes to radio, that we had, it's all computerized. It's on a screen. The show is on a screen. And the live hit with the person giving an introduction to the music is just that. And in some cases, it's even taped.
Would you, obviously this is progress, but you must have been attached to the other way of doing things.
Yeah, we don't change easily in these stages of life. And I'm not sure how I would deal with radio if I were ever to do it again with the computer, but I've imagined it, and I think I could move into it because I did all my own editing for my flashback features, all of it.
How flashback? Yeah. How long did you do that program?
I think we did it for 11 years.
Did you?
I did 585 of them, I think.
Did you really?
Yeah. Steve Guthrie started in the early stages of it, and then I took it over thinking I should probably be doing that and set Steve free to do things in the newsroom.
Right.
And then I expanded that, and of course did a lot of research and messing around and getting video and tape and so on.
But you once told me you took a great deal of care and time and trouble to get those flashbacks, didn't you?
I did, probably more than they warranted, but I'm not sure about, it's hard to say that, but I always figured when I was pleased with them, they would be okay. But yes, I consumed a lot of time. It wouldn't be worth it in a sense under normal circumstances, because I would be into my own time for a lot of it.
But Graham, they were very well done and very popular. People really enjoyed them.
I do hear about those quite frequently.
I bet you do.
I do.
Yeah.
Probably in the first year more so than Campus Quiz.
Yeah.
Because it was it stopped, of course, and to find somebody to spend that time, it's perfectly understandable why it wouldn't be continued. It doesn't make economic sense, and I clearly understand that.
Not everything has to make economic sense.
No, but from an operation
I guess,
where they have to make a living and they have to make sure that there's the shareholders are satisfied. That's one of the things that I was allowed a great deal of latitude, and I would be remiss if I didn't say what a nice arrangement I had with the television station and how I was treated with great respect.
Well, that's nice to hear. And you were also, over the years you've been here, highly involved in community activities. What was a couple maybe of your favorites?
Well, the Peter Robinson Awards, because you were on the committee. We had a lot of fun doing those.
We had a lot of smart remarks.
We did. I don't think anybody else found them very smart.
That didn't matter.
No, it didn't matter at all, as long as we found each other smart. I've done, a fair amount of judging for things.
Yes.
And the Gord Hollenbeck Award. I try to do that as often as I can.
Right.
Often it's at times when I'm not here, but I just did the D-Day 75th, for example. So those are a great honor for me to be able to do those.
Well, I think you're very good at it, and Easter Seals you've done.
I have, yes. 40, how many years has that been? 44, 45,
Have you really done it for that long?
I haven't missed one, except I went to Europe once for the second one that I would have done, I think, or the third. And I wasn't here, I was in Europe. But that was the only one I missed since I started doing it, and when I first came here.
But Graham, that's a record in itself.
Well, I suppose it is. It's unusual, I guess, for someone to be at it that long. But it's great fun. We do it here at your TV. And what a great pleasure that is, to work with Marcus and and David and well, the whole gang here.
Right,
It
right.
really is.
No, it's very good, and a terrific charity.
It is, and always successful from the point of view
Yes, yeah.
of the telethon and of all the work that goes on around it that we don't see,
Yeah.
the preparation for
Yes,
it.
yeah.
People who make huge donations to it through the year and during the period of time as well. So we have a very giving community. I think that's one of the things that's lovely about, and an artistic community as well, which
Yes.
is a separate thing. But we have a very generous community. Peterborough is.
Well, Graham, I want to congratulate you on a brilliant broadcasting career.
Well, thank you.
And
Paul.
on behalf of the people of Peterborough, thank you for staying in Peterborough. And long may it continue.
Well, that's very kind, and
Well, no.
and long may it continue to my benefit, because it has been a wonderful experience, Paul.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. I'm Paul Wilson, and we had the pleasure of Graham Hart's company in this program. Thanks again.